Okay guys, today I am making chowmein. This is the first time I bought chicken in a while, so you know I'm an artist, so I gotta be true to my craft. And you always make chowmein with a nice, good chicken. I got this young baby chicken. Look, he trying to get away, but he ain't gonna get away. He gonna end up in my pot of chowmein, and it's gonna be good. So I'm gonna first clean, even though I'm gonna take all the skin off the chicken, I'm gonna keep my chicken in the sink, and I'm gonna clean all the fat and the residue from the chicken, and then I'm gonna remove the skin, debone my chicken, and be ready to go. I want to wipe down my chicken with some lime, get it nice and clean. Get all of that nice and clean, so I'm just rubbing down the chicken skin with some lime, with a half a lime. And then I'm going to scrape off all this fat and the residue, like the extra skin and the feathers, because I don't want to make sure none of that is in my food. So, take the feathers off the wings. Trouble little angel, inconsistent, flying blind most of the time. Drama queen, praying and untangling. Feathers of her wings, captured by her dreams. Desperately she sings. So I'm going to clean this down. Rinse it off a little bit. Rinse my hands. And I'm going to get ready to cut this and season up my chicken. Because I want nice little bite-sized pieces that I put into the chowmein. I look good, I look good, I look good, 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 good. All right. Let me get my cutting board. So I'm going to take my chicken. I don't want any more. I'm going to take my chicken and I'm going to chop it down the middle so I can get it nicely cut up for the cook-up rice. So I'm going to go down my breast. I'm not going to use the breast. I'm going to use the thighs. And I'm going to use, I like dark meat in my chowmein. So you cut down the breastbone. This is a young chicken, so it cuts pretty easy. I'm going to clean out all the innards. I don't want any of that in my stuff. So make sure I get all that stuff out. Cut down. Get out all this gut stuff. Scrape all that out. I don't want all that extra stuff. And it's going in the food. I want to make sure that I can. So this is the chicken cut open, and I can take out all the pieces that I need. Use some of the things like the drumsticks and the wings if you want to cook those for something else. Getting out all the innards. We got all of that. That goes in the garbage. Don't need that. Remember growing up, my mom used to take the chicken liver and the gizzards and stuff like that and chop it up and saute it with onions and celery and all the stuff and put it in stuffing. But since I don't eat meat, and chicken is one of the first meats that I stopped eating, I don't do that anymore. So I only do this when I'm cooking for other people. Clean that out. So that's nice and clean. I want to take out all this extra fat. I don't want any of that on my in my chow mein. So I'm going to take out all that extra fat. Clean that off nice and good. Rinse it down with some lime juice. And cut it so I can get ready to season it. So once you have your chicken flat like this, I want to cut away the wings. I'm not going to use those in my cooker. Let me put this over the sink. So I'm going to cut my wings. You want to make sure you have a nice good knife so you get a good chop. First time around, once you chop the muscle or the flesh, then you can see exactly where the bone connects and just remove that. So I remove my wings. You can see where the legs connect. And remember, I'm not using any skin. I'm not doing fried chicken or anything. So all of this skin is going to be removed from the meat and chopped up. So I got a nice drumstick with the thigh. Take this little piece. You can just pop the bone. You can see where the joint connects. My other leg. And I'm going to take my breast meat. One breast, two breasts, red breast, blue breast. Okay. And so once you really dislodge the joint, you can just connect it. Okay. So I'm going to clean down my cutting board so I have a nice clean work surface. And I'm going to then rinse this off again. And I'm going to get to chopping all my chicken pieces. Wipe that down. I hate water all over my work surface while I'm working, so I wipe that down. Okay. So I'm going to just skin all my skin off my chicken. And because I only want the meat, I'm just going to saute the meat for chow mein. You don't put any of the chicken skin or any of that. And I like to make sure that I take all this extra fat off the meat. Because we don't want all that extra fat in our food. So we have a nice, moist, juicy, but lean cut without all the extra stuff. So, clean this well. Okay. So I got the one side. And skin the other thigh. Remove all the stuff. Get that nice and clean. All the excess removed. Because this is a young chicken, I'm going to use some of the breast meat. I'm just going to make sure that I just don't cook it, overcook it. This breast meat can be dry. So, let's do that. Take off that skin from that piece. Clean that. I'm going to leave the wings for something else. And all the gizzards and stuff. I'm not going to use that. Once I cut this chicken up, then I'm going to show you how you just put the chow mein together. Okay. So just like I disconnected and chopped down the bigger parts, I'm going to cut my drumsticks in half so I get my thighs and I get my drumsticks. We can chop that all up. I got my breast. I'm going to take some of the breastbone off. So I have just the meat. I'm going to chop this. When you're making chow mein, you want little bite-sized pieces so that you can put it, mix it with the chow mein noodles and the vegetables. And you don't have big chunks to chew through. So I'm going to dice up my chicken in small pieces. Put that to the side. Don't need a ton because I'm not making a huge pot of chow mein, and you don't want it overloaded with chicken. You just want just enough chicken that you get a bite of chicken with every forkful. So you don't want the pan overloaded with chicken. So I'm going to leave this other breast for something else, and I'm just going to cut these thighs. You can use those bones for stock, so I don't need to really cut that down. So let's see. Chop this down, bite-sized pieces. So I like the mix of a little of the breast meat and with the dark meat because it makes a nice, it gives it some more flavor, and then it makes it really moist, so everything isn't dry in there. Especially when you're using a fork. I like to cut off all these little extra pieces. I always find that's where some of the flavor is. So cut that down. Let me cut this away. And leave some of the chicken bone for soup or to make chicken stock later. And sometimes as a treat, I'll just boil the chicken bone, and whatever chicken is still on there, I scrape it off and I give it to the dogs in their food. They love it. They love it. And you want to make sure you cut away these tendons. You don't want those hard parts to chew through. You want everything that goes in the pot of chow mein to be edible. Okay. So I'm going to make nice diced bite-sized pieces of this. Got all this to go into the chow mein. I'm gonna let that sit for a minute. I got my drumsticks aside, the other chicken breast for another meal or for something else, and then I'm gonna get onions and all of that cut up. One of the tricks of making Guyanese chow mein is that you have to make sure you get the right chow mein. They used to sell a broadleaf chow mein, a broad chow mein that was almost like a linguine, but it's been almost impossible to find that anywhere anymore because it's so difficult for it being imported. So I think they just have like the skinny chow mein that's more along the lines of a spaghetti. So that's what we're going to be using today. Okay guys, so I have, my favorite is spring onion. This is the thing that I grew up. My mom always used spring onion in chow mein because it was pretty and it gave you that nice onion flavor. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut the chicken. I'm going to actually take this chicken off this cutting board, but like I said, the onions and the chicken are all going to be sauteed in the same pot. So you don't necessarily have to separate the onions. So I'm just going to use about this much because I'm not making a huge pot. So me being the nature-loving girl that I am, I will take these onion heads and I will regrow that and have spring onions in a few weeks. So I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to put that in the garden. And to my spring onions, I want to make some nice chops so that everything is a nice bite-sized piece. So I'm going to kind of thinly slice my spring onions, and it's going to give me little ringlets. I'm going to put that in when I cook my chicken. I'm also going to cut up some peppers. So all of that's going to be sauteed. One of the best things about using spring onions is that you don't get that massive onion smell like when you use regular onions that makes your eyes water. And you still get some pretty color and you get the onion flavor. And I love when it gets to the bottom part, the hollow green part, and you just get the thin ringlets. That looks so pretty when you put it in your food. Okay. So that's more than enough onions. Because once we mix the mixed vegetables and everything together, this is all going to come together nicely. So I want to put that there, get all my stuff ready. Take out some of these little pieces. They have a little more brown to them. Okay, so I'm going to throw that. Okay. So before we get started, I'm going to make a pot of hot water. To boil the chowmein. So this is the Guyanese chowmein, and usually it's made with eggs. So that's why I say I cook this kind of stuff when I'm making it for other people. But this one actually doesn't have egg. It's just wheat flour. So this is what it looks like. You always want to go to the Caribbean store and you get chowmein noodles, and this will be the right consistency for chowmein. This is the thin chowmein noodles, but it tastes the same. It's just really thin versus the thick one. It's about 4 times this size. So I'm going to put the chowmein there. I got my onions cut up. I'm going to get some peppers cut up. And I'm just going to use regular peppers. Red, green, yellow, whatever colors you like and you have on hand. Wash that off and cut up the 2 peppers, and these are straight out the garden, so that's the bonus for those. I want to pop out my seeds because the seeds can always go back either in the garden or the compost, and then you get a bonus. So I'm going to dice up my peppers. That smells good. These are some sweet, nice, succulent red peppers that came out the garden. So see the size of the peppers. So I'm going to do a dice on everything. Dice off this other one. Pull out the seeds. I'm going to dice that, and that should be enough peppers. So I'm going to keep everything balanced. Because to this chowmein, I'm going to add a whole thing of mixed vegetables. I love making one-pot meals because you just go back. Everything's in the one pot. It's so simple, and all the flavors come together nicely. peppers. I got the onions. Let's see what else. All right. So to that, I'm going to show you the setup for how we start making the chowmein. So I'm going to heat my pan just to cook my chicken. And the only vegetables that go in the pan with the chicken is just the onions and the peppers. And if you use celery, I don't have any celery right now, so I'm just using peppers and onions. So that's what you cook the chicken with. The other vegetables, like the bag of mixed vegetables, the mixed vegetables goes in with the noodles and the chicken once it's cooked, and all of that will cook together. So I'm going to let my pan heat up for the chicken. And then I'm going to start boiling my water for the noodles. Because you want your noodles to be al dente. So you put your water in there, boil it. So I'm going to let this heat up. So let's take a break. I'm going to get all my vegetables together, get my noodles together, boil my water for the noodles, and then I'll come back and show you how it all comes together. And I will also season the chicken so you get to see some of that. Anyway, okay, so we're back. I got my water boiling. So all the time when I'm making noodles, I always like to put the water with just a cap full of oil in it so that when I put my noodles in there, they don't stick. I'm only using half of this because I'm making a small quantity just for lunch today. So I'm going to put half of my noodles in there. And then I'm going to get my chicken and all of that started so that when the noodles is finished, we can get the chicken in while the noodles is still hot. Rice is one of those dishes that once you get the right ingredients, you make it your own. It's not something difficult. You don't have to be using like 5-6 different pots. I like to break up my noodles a little bit because it's one big long noodle. So we're going to take about half of this. That's about enough for 3 or 4 servings. We're going to put it in the pot. And let me show you the texture of these noodles. So they're a little bit different than like spaghetti. A little bit rougher, so you get more oomph to the bite. I'm going to put a little bit of more water because I want those noodles to cook evenly. Stir that around so that the noodles cook nicely. I only want to cook this for about 5 or 6 minutes so it gets al dente, so the noodles are not mushy, because I'm going to add the chicken, the vegetables, and all of that to the noodles. So I'm going to let that cook. I'm going to add half a bag of my mixed vegetables in there. With that, stirring my vegetables into my noodles. You can see what it looks like. So I'm going to stir my noodles with my vegetables and let that cook down. I'm not going to put any seasoning into the noodles and vegetables until after I add the chicken. So I make sure that I'm not over salting anything. So I'm going to let that cook up a little bit. That's going to take about 5 or 6 minutes for the pot to cook. All right. Hmm? Alright. Let's see. So I'm gonna let that cook on medium heat. Let that boil down to medium heat, and I'm going to so I'm going to get my chicken over in the pan. Put my chicken in first. Add my chicken. And I'm going to season my chicken in the pan. Just makes it a lot easier. I'm going to put my onions and peppers in the pan once the chicken is close to finished cooking, because it's really going to finish cooking when I add it to the noodles. So I put my chicken in there. I want that to cook down and get a nice caramelization on it. And you want to make sure that when you put the chicken in the pan, that the chicken is not overlapping each other. That it's one nice even layer so that everything can cook and get a nice color on it and brown nicely out. Nicely and evenly. Okay. So to that, I'm going to start seasoning up my chicken. And you want to season it to taste. I usually do one nice layer with the season all, and then I start to add my different herbs to it. I'm going to put a little dry ginger. I just like the flavor of ginger in savory dishes. I always think it gives it a nice little bite to it. Not too much to overpower it. Some turmeric, just a little to give it some color. I'm going to put a little ground white pepper and onion powder. I'm going to use some of my 21 Salute mixed seasoning. And I can be generous with this because this doesn't have salt in it. It's just a mix of dried herbs. Turn down that fire. Turn that down a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to keep this at medium. Once I turn my chicken and one side is brown, that's when I'll add my onions and peppers. Well, right now I'm just moving it around in the pan to make sure that it doesn't stick. And I have a little oil in here. I put a capful of oil, olive oil, avocado oil, walnut oil, grapeseed, whichever oil that you use to cook with. Grapeseed, avocado, and walnut are very healthy oils. That's what I've transitioned to using a lot now. They don't change the flavor of your food a whole lot, but they give you a more healthy fat. So I use that a lot. And yeah. We're going to let that sit and brown for a little while. I'm going to check my noodles, because the noodles are already starting to get soft. I'm going to pour off some of this water so that I don't over soak the noodles, and then I'm going to be ready as soon as the chicken is finished to put the noodles and the chicken in the pot. Okay. So I'm going to take the pot of noodles over to the sink and drain it. Oh Lord. And so once the water is drained out of the noodles, you can see that the noodles are almost, so I'm going to let that just cook down a little bit to dry out. So it'll be ready when I put my chicken in there. Because you want your chowmein noodles to cook down to the point where it's dry. You don't want any liquid left inside the pot of your chowmein. You want it to almost be like a rice dish. You don't need gravy and all that because the chicken and everything is moist enough that there doesn't need to be extra liquid in the noodles. So we want to cook that down, cook that out. So I'm going to check real quick just to see how tender my noodles are. Make sure that they're cooked enough. It can cook a little more, but it's going to cook in the water that's left in the pot. I'm going to turn that down to low. And I'm going to add my chicken in there soon. So now the chicken is browning nicely, I'm going to add the peppers and onions. Turn this off real quick. So I got the pot full of the peppers and onions that we cut up earlier, and I'm going to saute that up nicely. I turned off the pot on my noodles because I don't want my noodles to overcook. So I want to maintain the texture and the firmness. Just trying to chop through the white parts of the spring onion to separate all those little ringlets. mix that around so then I can just make sure it's not sticking. And then I'm going to add the chicken, sauteed chicken and onions and peppers into the noodles. And we'll be almost ready to plate. Let that simmer on low heat. Bless you. Bless you. Gotta throw all these innards away. Need a plastic bag. Throw all this stuff in. Did you take trash out yet? No, for this chicken. Okay. All right, family, it's almost time to put this stuff together. All right. Before I add the chicken to the noodles, I'm just going to check to make sure that everything is cooked. Because we don't want to make sure we don't get no raw chicken in there. So, and I want to make sure it's not fresh. Let me get the other pot holder. Okay. So you see the nice color? I'm gonna add all of this into the pot with the noodles. And we're gonna get all those flavors nice and mixed together. Right. And we don't wanna stir this. We just wanna fold all the meat. We want to fold everything into the noodles. So just kind of take it and flip. Take it and flip to the middle. Take it and flip to the middle. And you let that simmer on very low heat for just a few more minutes. Get everything down from the sides of the pot into the dish. And we'll see how it works out. Okay. So that's just going to simmer for a few more minutes. I will make sure that all the flavors and the seasoning is incorporated. And I'm going to get a plate and we'll be ready for lunch. Okay. Just like that. Boom! Guyanese chowmein is ready. You see that? Look at that. Get a piece of chicken on there. Some pepper. Mmm.